Hello and welcome to the Rare Voices podcast. I'm Mark Rowland, and on this episode, we'll be talking about parental anxiety when your child has a rare condition and how to cope with it.
When I first Googled SDS, I basically went into denial mode, I think. I thought, she hasn't got all of these symptoms. Maybe she hasn't got it.
She is going to go into bone marrow failure. We're very aware of that. But it's so unknown as to when that will happen. So we're living appointment to appointment.
I used to sort of like spoil them with toys because I feel guilty that they have this condition. So I give them more toys.
In the Better Together for Healthy Bone Marrow Alliance Rare Voices report, parents of children living with a bone marrow condition reported higher levels of anxiety, with 77% feeling anxious at least some of the time. So how do they cope? I am joined by Stacey Perry and Julia Wagstaff, whose daughters live with Fanconi Anaemia and Shwachman Diamond Syndrome respectively. And we're joined again by Shah Riaz, who has two children with Dyskeratosis Congenita. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello.
Now, to give people an idea of how long you've been managing your children's conditions, how early did you start noticing symptoms and what were those early signs? Can I start with you, Stacey?
So Kyra actually stopped growing when I was pregnant. So she was delivered at 32 weeks. And then they sort of thought she would catch up with growth and she never did. So she was referred to a growth hormone specialist, which kind of didn't flag anything. We went to see a paediatric doctor in Blackpool who had actually studied Fanconi Anaemia. And as Kyra has small stature, she's got hyperplastic thumbs and she also has cafe-au-lait spots, which obviously we then found out were all factors of Fanconi Anaemia, like physical aspects of it. So obviously the doctor put all that together. We did some tests and she was 2.5 when she was diagnosed with Fanconi Anaemia. So it all kind of went from there, really.
Right. Julia, does that resonate with you?
Our story is a bit different. Lara was born normally, was a healthy baby until I returned to work. She was about 8 months old then. And she went full-time into nursery, and within a few days, she developed spots. We took her to the GP, who thought it was chickenpox, but she became more unwell, so she ended up being admitted into hospital and developed sepsis while she was there. And after that, she was put under the care of specialists at Birmingham Children's Hospital, who initially thought she had autoimmune neutropenia. And then at about the age of 3, it was actually her liver consultant, the hepatologist, who suggested, could it be that she has got Shwachman Diamond Syndrome, and asked about her a few more questions. And then they clinically confirmed it from a stool sample, actually. But she was genetically tested, which confirmed the clinical diagnosis.
Okay. Shah, I think last time you were here, you mentioned cataracts as one of the early signs. What else did you notice?
The next thing what happened was slowly there's ulcers. My daughter had ulcers. And first we went to the normal dentist and then they referred us to Guy's Hospital. And when we were there was long consultations. They were just figuring out what was going on. They tried to apply different methods, to ulcers, like steroids. And there was not changing much, very little change, hardly any change. Gradually there was, and then they started saying, well, we're not quite sure why these are happening at this early age. And, we've got to do more investigations. So they've done a genetic test, but that never came back. I didn't see anything. And then it was later on when my son was born and then he had cataracts and then we done again, new genetic tests, and then they confirmed that this is dyskeratosis at that point. So, and the other effects that have been going on since then was the nails. Their nails start to disappear. It's to do with the regeneration of cells that doesn't occur. So we, gradually seen that. And then, the kids ask, like my daughter was asking, why am I getting this? Why am I getting these nails? What's going to happen? And there's no answers, really. That's the main thing. You have to just almost, I can't say lie, but you have to tell them, nothing wrong, just leave it, ignore it. You don't want to focus on that. Otherwise you get into a cycle of, them getting negative. You don't want the kids to get negative themselves. You understand? That can affect them further. So, so what you do is just ignore it, do something else. That's what I would say.
Obviously, we've all Googled conditions in the past when we think we've got them. Did you all do that yourselves? And how was that helpful? Was it completely unhelpful? Tell me about that.
Completely unhelpful. Obviously, the first thing you do, they tell you not to Google, but it's obviously naturally the first thing you do because it's a rare condition, not heard of it before. So I've got nothing to base any facts off other than that's the first time you've ever heard the name of the condition. For me, it was very overwhelming because the initial information about Fanconi anemia, it's quite doom and gloom. It's quite it reads as fatal. Like you read the things about Fanconi anemia and you immediately think worst case scenario. And I think it definitely for me as a parent, a first time parent especially, it almost triggers a grieving process of like life as you thought being a first-time parent was going to be, because suddenly there's all these obstacles in the way to what you would deem as a normal experience of parenthood, with the extra obstacles thrown in. And obviously, you've not actually been given all the facts and figures, or, there's no liaison initially. It's just, this is what we're looking at. And it does take a little while to sort of get everything into place, to be seeing doctors and nurses who do sort of soften the blow a little bit and give you more facts. And so, yeah, Google was not our best friend, but it's, like I say, it's a natural instinct to want to know as much information as possible. And obviously that's usually the first place you would find it. So
that's what I did as well. In terms of Googling, I looked at the condition and it was all negative, really. I mean, really, horrible consequences. And in your mind, it plays that this is going to happen rapidly, So Google is not probably the best thing to look at straight away, because you always get the medical and they always talk about the negative and you assume that negative is going to happen immediately. Your brain just goes like that. So I would just advise against that. But for knowledge purposes, yes, you can go eventually. But talk to your consultant, talk to other families that got the condition and see what happened to them, I would say.
I think, of course, I Googled as well. Everybody does. When I first Googled SDS, I basically went into denial mode, I think. I thought, she hasn't got all of these symptoms. Maybe she hasn't got it, I was hoping it might have been wrong. So I went through a phase of that. And then as I looked at what Google told me about low life expectancy and bone marrow failure and cancer and death, you're just horrified, you're distraught, you go into massive panic mode, huge anxiety. But as I scrolled down, I saw SDS websites, SDS UK, and then that prompted me to click onto there. And then I got a more balanced view. I got a more kind of measured opinion. I got the facts. So initial Googling was unhelpful, but when I dived deeper, it turned out to be a useful thing to do.
So you found some comfort in the end.
Yeah.
Through the process.
Yeah.
Looking at you both, where did you find the comfort after that kind of obviously big anxiety hit of looking at on Google and finding what was?
Yeah, when we went to a actual event arranged by DC, there was a barbecue, and that's where I met some people there, other families. That's where I actually felt comfort. I mean, I had a conversation with a father whose son had a similar condition, and he explained what happened. He had a leukemia, and I was really anxious. I think I fired so many questions. Every question, and I was asking the question, everybody's looking at me, why is he doing that? Because I'm anxious. Do you understand? And it was my first to go to the event itself. But then on the side, it took me to the side and said, well, my son's got it, and they've done this treatment, and, and it's worked okay. He went through that and he's now fine. So that gave me a bit of comfort. That was the main thing.
Yeah, there's definitely comfort when you find like other people's stories, because I found the Fanconi Hope website not long after obviously the initial Google process, but also like social media platforms like Instagram, and finding like other people's stories. Like one of the first stories I found was Louise Dalglish's, who her parents actually founded Fanconi Hope. So actually to read somebody's real life experience and kind of where they were at now, and that the whole process kind of like gave you more of an understanding from a more personal point of view, as opposed to just the the clinical information that you initially find on Google, which does read quite scary. It did just kind of think like, oh, there's other people out there, there's other families, and that sort of opened my mind to like where I might find more of a support than maybe, like say, just trying to look at facts and figures that didn't really go in, because of it was a scary time. It was emotional, it was quite daunting, and a massive like thing of the unknown at the time. So to actually put a personal spin on it is what kind of really helped me in the early stages of diagnosis.
Right. So what would you say was the biggest source of your anxiety, like currently, sort of day to day?
I think for me, it's like having a child with Fanconi. It's like it takes the normal out of childhood ailments. So things that other parents might not necessarily, like if your child has a nosebleed or a tummy ache or a few bruises, like I say normal in like, in quotation marks, but obviously a child with Fanconi, it's like you are almost like for every single thing that's wrong with them, you are looking at, oh gosh, that could be something way more sinister than maybe what it should be. And then, you do go down like a little bit of a rabbit hole thinking that worst case scenario, when sometimes it is perfectly normal. But I think it's just that everyday thing of, overanalyzing like different like sort of symptoms and things like that. And I think the biggest anxiety is like sort of, she is going to go into bone marrow failure. We're very aware of that, but it's so unknown as to when that will happen. So we can't really live more than like 6 months at a time. We're living appointment to appointment, and people want to book a holiday, or can you come to my wedding in a year? And it's like, oh, I don't know actually. So it is almost like that's our reality of you just don't know how long it's the whole process is going to be. So it's that's the biggest thing for me as a parent.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to Stacey. When you go and have any blood test done for them, you're just, and then the results are coming, you're getting anxious. What's it going to say? It's a countdown. Something's going wrong. They're going to call us up, and then it's a relief again. But then you're waiting for the next appointment, and then life goes on. You forget about it for a little while, and then when the appointments happen, you again in that situation. It's a constant tense situation. You don't know when something's going to happen.
Yeah, you're just living appointment to appointment, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
And it builds, like sort of drops in between, because you have that little reassurance for a little while, but then as another appointment approaches, it's like, anything could change at any time. So you can't kind of relax.
And then things manifest as well. Like I said, different things like skin conditions, other things you don't know. Like my son had a difficulty in eating, for example. We didn't know. And that was over 2 years. But we went back to the doctors, and it just took a long time to get that figured out. You understand? So that was another factor, because they say in these conditions, nothing's actually fully defined. It's not like everything in advance. There are things that doctors don't know about these conditions. So they're learning as well.
I think for me, it's that kind of continuous, Stacey said, looking out for signs of illness, looking out for that spike in temperature. You're just really wary of that sort of thing. But also a source of anxiety longer term for me, which is always in my mind, is that I need to be an advocate for Lara. I need to make sure that she's supported as best she can, health-wise, educationally, emotionally. All of that is in my mind, and I'm kind of that force, that driving force that's trying to make sure that her voice is heard.
Right. And I can imagine that you and your children offer a lot of mutual support to each other. So how do you support each other, day to day, or when you're going to appointments, or, whatever you're dealing with?
For me, I've just always had a very open and honest conversation with Kyra, because obviously, as much as I'm her parent, and like Julie was saying, we advocate for our children, it's them living with the condition, and our job really is to prepare them for a time when they are sort of going to be managing it themselves. So obviously Kyra was diagnosed at 2.5. She's 13 now. So I've just kind of fed her little bits of information that seemed age appropriate. Even things like she knew she was having regular blood tests rather than just ignoring like why she was going, just saying you've got poorly blood when she was younger. But to now, obviously, she's at an age where she can Google herself. She can, social media is going to become a part of her life very soon. And I'm aware that I can't necessarily protect her from things like that. So I have made a promise not to Google anything, which I know sounds really hypocritical after what we've said, but I know how that read, and I would like to be the one that is there for her, to support her and to explain things. Also, I've got a younger child, Tylen, who obviously idolises his older sister, but he's now very aware of it. So obviously giving him the tools as well to be a support system. Like I say, just open and honest communication. And because I do that for Kyra, like she respects me and she trusts me enough and her dad enough to obviously, trust us that what we're saying is the right thing and that we're not going to do anything or put her through anything that's going to harm her or upset her unnecessarily. But she's really resilient, and I think that has come from giving her information and giving her the tools to sort of be able to manage this in her own time and space. And obviously as she gets older, like I say, I lose that control a little bit because she's going to be doing it herself. So it's just giving her the tools to have her own voice and her own, advocate for herself as well.
Laura and I have, we've kind of bonded through the SDS process, if you like. We see her SDS as a specialness, something that makes her unique. She's super rare. So when we go to appointments, it's kind of a nice time that we can have together. We go out for days in London when she goes to Great Ormond Street, for example, and do nice things. I suppose Laura supports me she inspires me, she motivates me. I see a massive resilience in her, just like Stacey was saying, and she just, sometimes I'm in awe of how she copes with everything. And, I find her really inspiring. So that's how she supports me.
Yeah, same. Kyra, she is a massive inspiration, and she inspires others as well because she is so strong and resilient, and I think it gives her a sense of pride. So she wants to know more, and she's fantastic. So
yeah, in terms of support, helping them, I give them psychological support. I mean, they do ask, like my daughter did ask when she was younger, why am I got the condition? And there's no real answer there. I have to just say, that's what life is, And she says, why have I been given it, And it's very difficult. No one knows, why these happen. And so you just have to calm them down, give them things. I mean, I used to sort of like spoil them with toys. I don't know, because I feel guilty that they have this condition. So I give them more toys. So whenever they're saying something, I said, all right, my wife said, why are you doing that? But I feel that I have to, you don't know the time they've got, on this planet. There might not be that long. So I spoil them a lot with giving toys, things, and gifts that maybe I shouldn't as a parent, but that's what I do.
Any final words of advice for other parents that might be in similar situations as yourselves?
My biggest bit of advice is, so I think one thing that's really helped me along the journey is to just try and take each appointment as it comes. Like, don't worry too much about knowing everything all at once and knowing everything you need to know about the condition, because it is so overwhelming. And actually, your journey is unique to you and your family, because especially people with Fanconi Anemia, it's such a wide spectrum. Like you can't really pull from other people's stories too much because they are so varied. So just, living your own journey, fill the days, like Shah said, spoil them a little bit, fill the days in between. Like we always made appointment days a treat day. So hospital appointment, then where do you want to go for lunch? What do you want to do now? And so Kyra's always associated the hospital positively. She will get home, she's like, oh, that's the best day ever. It's like she forgets the blood test in the morning and she forgets, everything she's been through because she's got to go for a nice meal and she's got to, go do what she wants to do for the rest of the day. And also just really use your community. to seek support, because, like I say, as much as you can't always relate to other people's stories, like, they are the people that know what you're going through more than anybody else, because people in your everyday life, they can support you as much as they can, but they don't really fully understand. They don't understand what you're going through and how consuming it can be. But obviously our FA community is fantastic at, doesn't matter what stage in your journey you're at, there's somebody there to pick you up and talk to. So that's what's fantastic.
It's easy for me to feel overwhelmed. So for me, having my own time and my own space is really crucial. And I've learned that self-care isn't selfish, and to care for someone else, you have to take care of yourself first, otherwise you won't be able to do it. So that's what I would say is really important. And finally, I would say probably that if you're offered any help, take it and connect, like Stacey's saying, connect with the people who are in a similar situation to you, but make sure that you don't think that your situation will be the same, because it won't. Live your own journey. But yeah, actively look for that support by connecting with others, because it's out there.
I would say, keep together, because you don't know how long anybody's got. This general thing as well for most people, don't get too involved in your work. Be as a family, work and do things together, go out and about, do these odd things that you can, that will really help. That's what life is about. You've got to take that journey, and, there's always problems within that journey. So, but connect with people, connect with your children, stay together, help them out. That's what I would say. That's being a family, really.
Fantastic advice. Thank you all for your time.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
For listening.
Thank you for having us.
In the next Rare Voices podcast, we'll be looking at the need for psychological support for people living with rare conditions and where to find it. Be sure to subscribe on your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And visit super-rare.org/podcasts to help us make more of these. This podcast is brought to you by the Better Together for Healthy Bone Marrow Alliance, incorporating the Aplastic Anemia Trust, Congenital Anemia Network, DC Action, Fanconi Hope, P&H Support, and SDS UK. It is funded by the National Lottery Community Fund.